Have you ever been caught off guard by someone vanishing from your life without a single explanation? One day, you're sharing jokes, memories, and vulnerable moments, and the next, it's as if they never existed. No messages, no calls, not even a single hint about what went wrong. You find yourself replaying every conversation, wondering if you missed some massive red flag or if they're secretly plotting a dramatic comeback. It's human nature to wrestle with endless questions. Did they ever care at all? Are they thinking about me? Or maybe there's a bigger mystery lurking beneath the surface. Disappearances like this often trigger a wave of rumors, speculations, and unsettling suspicions. Some people say it's nothing but a shallow ghosting trend, while others believe there's something far deeper at play, like an unconscious fear they're not prepared to face. What if they're quietly watching you from afar, too afraid or too haunted by their own insecurities to speak up? Is there some dramatic inner battle they're fighting that has nothing to do with you? That's where Carl Jung steps into the picture. One of the most controversial figures in modern psychology, Jung is credited with introducing the idea that our relationships are ruled by hidden forces within the unconscious. Although many people think of him as the calm, scholarly counterpoint to Sigmund Freud, the truth is that Jung had plenty of controversies stirring around him. Whispers of rumored affairs, unconventional spiritual practices, intense rivalries, and shocking theories that rattled even his closest colleagues. His story alone is enough to make you think twice about how much of our lives is driven by factors we barely notice. In this video, we'll plunge into the unseen motivations that may cause someone to vanish, drawing on Jung's concepts of the shadow and projection. But we won't just talk about the psychology. We'll also look at the controversies, the hush-hush rumors, and the reason many people see Jung's work as radical, even by today's standards. By the time we finish, you may discover that the real question isn't why did they leave, but rather, what does their disappearance reveal about me? And you might be shocked by how liberating that shift in perspective can be. Keep watching if you want to uncover the deeper layers of sudden disappearances, possible unspoken ties, and the surprising ways you can break free from the emotional weight of longing for someone who's chosen silence. Grab your curiosity and buckle in. This journey is about to reveal more than you expect. Most of us have heard a million stories about why people suddenly cut off contact. Some say it's a test, like they want to see if you'll chase them. Others claim it's just the classic ghosting phenomenon, a product of our digital era where everyone has endless options. And then there are the wilder rumors that they disappeared because they're energy vampires who feed on your confusion, or that they secretly never cared in the first place. But is it really that simple? Beneath the surface, something more intricate might be happening. People rarely disappear without a reason, even if that reason isn't obvious. Sometimes they carry old wounds and hidden fears that flare up whenever a relationship starts getting meaningful. Other times, they might be facing personal crises, family problems, mental health challenges, or moral dilemmas they can't articulate. Regardless of the specifics, their behavior can feel eerily random from the outside, leaving you baffled and desperate for answers. The internet is flooded with advice on how to handle a vanisher. Forget them, cut them off, send them a savage text, manifest them back into your life, and on it goes. Some of these methods can work for surface-level healing, but often they don't truly address the unconscious factors that might connect you to someone even when they're physically absent. This is where Carl Jung's theories become truly compelling. Jung believed that our psyches are not governed solely by logic or conscious thought. Instead, we're driven by underlying urges, archetypes, and repressed emotions, forces we may not even be aware of. For instance, what if the person who disappeared triggered some hidden pattern in you, an abandonment fear or a longing to be rescued? And once they pulled away, the pain you felt had more to do with your own unhealed issues than anything they actually did? At the same time, the one who vanished might be struggling with their own unspoken conflicts. Maybe getting close to you awakened a side of themselves they weren't prepared to face. Our unconscious can push us to run from people who mirror parts of ourselves we can't yet accept. The result? Confusion, heartbreak, and a whole lot of unanswered messages. Rumors and controversies swirl around Jung's name because of how deeply he dove into such issues. He claimed that our relationships serve as mirrors of our own psyche, reflecting back the shadows we've tucked away, and that's just scratching the surface. Some critics have labeled him too mystical because he spoke of synchronicities, meaningful coincidences, and spiritual transformations. Others have pointed fingers at possible unethical boundaries with his patients or lovers. Yet for all the noise around him, people keep returning to Jung's work for one reason. It makes sense of experiences we can't explain rationally. So before you jump to conclusions about the vanishers in your life, let's dig into the deeper why behind their abrupt exit. Stick around for more than just theories. We're uncovering controversies, illusions, and how these secrets might help you break free from the emotional grip of their absence. Carl Jung might seem like a calm, bespectacled scholar in old photographs, but behind those wire-rimmed glasses lay a life filled with drama and speculation. For starters, his break with Sigmund Freud was anything but polite. Sure, official history tells us they had an intellectual disagreement, but whispers suggest it was a raging battle of egos, with Freud feeling betrayed by Jung's growing interest in spirituality, mysticism, and the unconscious. Rumors also point to Jung's complicated personal life. Some say he had a questionable entanglement with one of his patients, Sabine Spielrein, who later became a pioneering figure in psychology herself. Others highlight Jung's rumored involvement with esoteric societies or spiritual practices that mainstream scientists ridiculed at the time. These controversies weren't just personal, they shaped his theories. Jung's willingness to explore taboo topics like alchemy, dream symbolism, and cultural mythology opened doors that Freud's approach never fully addressed. Why should you care about Jung's personal controversies in a discussion about someone ghosting you? Because they highlight a core message. The unconscious doesn't play by neat social rules. Jung's life was a demonstration of how repressed aspects, what he called the shadow, can leak into everything we do, from our career paths to our relationships. If Jung himself wrestled with moral dilemmas and hidden desires, it's not surprising that all of us carry similarly mysterious forces within. What's truly shocking is how many of Jung's critics insist his life was full of contradictions. He talked about the importance of integrating your shadow, yet there are stories that he, too, ran away from confronting certain aspects of himself for years. This duality perfectly mirrors the process that might be happening in the vanisher's life. Someone who cannot handle the truths you reflect back at them might bolt rather than face their own shadow. Some skeptics say Jung's entire approach is too spiritual, hinting that psychology should stay strictly scientific. But if you've ever felt that eerie sense of an intuitive connection with another person, especially one who disappeared without a word, then you already know life isn't always about textbook logic. Jung's controversies underscore the fact that we don't just connect with people on a conscious level. There are hidden layers at work. Understanding these hidden layers could be the key to setting yourself free from endless heartache or confusion. From rumored affairs to bold claims about the collective unconscious, Jung's life shows us that illusions and hidden truths often go hand in hand. He was no saint, and he certainly wasn't perfect. But his willingness to face taboo subjects might offer you a roadmap for confronting your own hidden attachments, especially if you're stuck waiting for someone to show up again. If you find yourself lost in the labyrinth of, why would they do this? Jung's controversies may hint at a bigger narrative. Sometimes people vanish because they're terrified of what they see in you, which is actually a reflection of what they're avoiding in themselves. At this point, you might be asking, okay, so they disappeared. But how does that tie in with Jung's idea of the shadow? Well, think of the shadow as a hidden basement filled with all the traits, fears, desires, and wounds you don't like admitting you have. Maybe you consider yourself super kind, but there's a streak of envy in there. Maybe you see yourself as confident, but there's a buried fear of rejection tucked away where no one can see. Everyone has a shadow, and most people spend their entire lives trying to keep it locked away. According to Jung, relationships force us to shine a light into that dark basement. When you connect deeply with someone, you aren't just exchanging pleasantries, you're mirroring each other's repressed traits. It can be exhilarating when that mirror shows you qualities you admire in yourself, but it can be downright terrifying when it shows you something you're desperate to avoid. This is often why people run. Staying close to you might require facing insecurities they can't bear to examine. So if you've been left hanging by someone who seemed to care 1 minute and vanish the next, it might not be about you at all. It might be about them confronting a hidden part of themselves they can't handle. Could it be that your presence reminds them of their fear of commitment or their guilt about a past mistake? Or maybe you represent a level of emotional intimacy they've never navigated before. When confronted with this, the simplest solution, at least on a subconscious level, is to disappear. There's a reason this concept is so powerful. Think about the times you've avoided a friend or bailed on a plan because it touched a nerve in you. Multiply that by 100, and you can see why someone might cut you off completely to dodge the intensity of their own shadow. Humans can go to extraordinary lengths to avoid discomfort. The real twist? You have a shadow, too. If the vanishing act leaves you feeling devastated, ask yourself, what insecurity of mine does this trigger? Maybe you always feared abandonment, and their disappearance confirmed your worst suspicions. Maybe you struggle with trusting your own worth, and their silence feels like proof you aren't valuable enough. This might sound harsh, but it's also liberating. Once you see the pattern, you can break it. Digging into your shadow doesn't mean declaring yourself flawed or broken. It means you're brave enough to own the messy, unpolished sides of who you are. It means you're done waiting for someone else's validation to feel complete. People who vanish often do so because they haven't embraced their own hidden depths. By doing the exact opposite, by confronting your own shadows, you free yourself from the emotional havoc their exit has caused. Ready to explore the game-changing concept that could explain any sudden silence? Don't click away, because next, we're diving into Jung's theory of projection. An even more eye-opening reason your vanished connection still keeps you up at night. All right, projection is another big concept in Jungian psychology. If the shadow is your hidden basement, projection is what happens when you shine a flashlight into someone else's yard instead of your own. In simpler terms, you attribute your suppressed emotions, motives, or flaws to another person. Ever heard a friend say something like, "You're so jealous," when they're the ones acting envious? That's projection in action. When someone disappears on you, the sting often intensifies because of the projection swirling in both parties. Let's say you've got a deep fear of being unlovable, and you project that fear onto the person who left. Suddenly, every second of their silence becomes evidence of your unworthiness. On their side, they might project a fear of emotional entanglement onto you, convincing themselves that staying could trap them in a situation they can't handle. These dynamics create a web of misunderstandings that run so deep it almost feels fated. That's why it can be so baffling when they pull away with no logical warning. Their unconscious might be screaming, "Get out before this turns into a painful mirror I can't escape." Meanwhile, you're left bewildered, asking, "What did I do wrong?" The truth is, you might not have done anything wrong at all. This is where some of Jung's more controversial ideas about synchronicities come into play. He believed that sometimes events and people weave into our lives at exactly the right moment, almost as if guided by an invisible hand. In relationships, these synchronicities might show up as improbable coincidences, instant connections, or repeated patterns you can't quite explain. Perhaps you met this person in a way that felt fated, only for them to vanish and leave you feeling like the entire universe played a cruel joke on you. But what if these synchronicities are actually a nudge from the unconscious, reminding you to look within? Whether or not you buy into the mystical side, the emotional reality remains the same. You're left with a potent lesson. You can't control someone else's actions, but you can decide how you respond to them. Will you let your projections keep fueling your pain, or will you confront those unresolved fears head-on? At the end of the day, unraveling the reasons for their silence might not give you the closure you crave. Closure, especially in Jungian terms, often emerges when you realize that the outer drama was a catalyst for inner discovery. And that's exactly where your personal power lies. Let's shift gears to one of the most common obsessions after someone disappears. Do they still think about me? You might be scanning social media for cryptic posts, rereading old messages, or analyzing what your mutual friends say about them. It's normal to wonder if you crossed their mind, or if they've erased you altogether. In the realm of Jung's theories, the possibility remains that they do still think about you, especially if the bond you shared awakened parts of their own unconscious. Even if they're determined to avoid you in the external world, inner forces like dreams and nagging memories can keep them tied to your presence. If they saw something in you that resonated deeply, whether it was a reflection of their highest aspirations or their scariest insecurities, chances are you're not so easy to forget. However, Jung was also quick to point out the danger of romanticizing an absence. Just because someone can't shake your memory doesn't mean they'll return or treat you better. Their unspoken thoughts might be a swirl of fear, regret, or even fascination, but that doesn't necessarily translate into positive action. The idea that they're secretly checking my social media every day might be a comforting fantasy, or it might be true. In either case, your well-being shouldn't hinge on that possibility. Meanwhile, skeptics argue that all this talk about the unconscious is unscientific drama. But as we saw with Jung's own controversies, cutting-edge ideas often provoke criticism before they're fully understood. For instance, many of Jung's contemporaries found his emphasis on dreams and archetypes downright strange. Yet we live in a time where mental health professionals increasingly incorporate holistic views, acknowledging that rational explanation alone can't untangle every emotional mystery. So do they think about you? Maybe. The real question is, does it matter for your path forward? This might sound blunt, but placing your life on pause, waiting for them to acknowledge you again, can become a form of self-torment. Jung's perspective suggests that if you keep feeling their presence, it could signal unfinished business within your own psyche, something you need to confront or reclaim. Their private thoughts, in that sense, are less relevant than your inner process. If you've made it this far, you might be thinking, okay, great. I see they might be wrestling with their shadow or projecting their fears, but I'm still the one left holding the emotional baggage. That's where the real work begins, breaking the spell of their hold on your mind and heart. Whether they actively think about you or not, you're ready to stop letting their absence control your day-to-day life. Confront your own shadow. Start by asking yourself which insecurities, fears, or hidden desires this disappearance has triggered. Write them down, think about them, or talk it through with someone you trust. When you bring these dark corners to light, they lose their grip on you. Jung emphasized that the first step to integrating the shadow is simple awareness. Release the projected blame. It's so easy to say, they left me, so they're the one who caused my pain. But each of us projects. Could it be that you're expecting them to meet a need you haven't met for yourself, like validation or worthiness? Releasing that blame and focusing on your part in the emotional equation can set you free faster than you'd imagine. Honor the lesson. Sometimes the hardest part is accepting that they might not come back with a heartfelt apology or explanation. Jung taught that closure often occurs within, not from external answers. When you mentally thank the experience for revealing parts of yourself you otherwise would never have explored, a shift happens. You stop feeling like a powerless victim of someone else's whims. Engage in symbolic actions. Jung believed the unconscious responds powerfully to symbolic gestures. That could mean writing a letter you never send, burning an old photograph, safely, or creating a personal ritual to mark the end of this cycle. It might sound a bit mystical, but such actions can communicate to your deeper self that you're ready to move on. Seek guidance if necessary. Breaking an emotional spell can be tough, especially if it pokes at unresolved trauma or past heartbreak. If you find yourself stuck, consider professional help. A therapist trained in Jungian or depth psychology might offer new insights. This isn't about mental weakness, it's about giving yourself the support you deserve. By reclaiming your power through these steps, you start to see that you don't need them to reappear or explain themselves for you to feel whole again. They might eventually resurface, or they might not. But your life doesn't hinge on that possibility anymore. You're learning how to stand solidly on your own, shadows and all. You've probably thought about a scenario where, months or even years down the line, the person who vanished suddenly pops back into your world with a text or a call. Maybe they say, "Hey, I've been thinking about you." Maybe they show up with a half-baked apology or some cryptic explanation like, "I needed space." A part of you might be thrilled. Finally, proof they still care. Another part might feel rage or resentment, wanting them to feel the sting you've endured. If you've truly integrated Jung's ideas, facing your shadow, letting go of projections and reclaiming your power, their return hits differently. You're no longer operating from a place of desperate need. You can evaluate their reappearance with clarity. Why are they really back? Have they done any inner work? Or are they just testing to see if you're still an option? Here's a shocking twist to consider. Sometimes they re-enter your life solely because the energetic tie was never resolved, and now that you've grown, they sense the shift. People can be unconsciously drawn to those who break old patterns. It might not be a conscious calculation on their part. They might just feel a pull toward the new confidence or self-awareness you've developed. Yet none of that guarantees they're ready to sustain a healthy relationship or friendship. They might still be dancing around their unresolved issues, possibly about to vanish again if things get too real. The difference now is you're prepared. You have the perspective to decide whether reconnecting with them actually serves your growth or reopens a wound you've worked hard to heal. One aspect many people overlook is that by the time they come back, you may have evolved beyond the need for their presence in your life. This doesn't mean you harbor hatred or bitterness. It simply means you've learned that they aren't your missing puzzle piece. If you choose to engage, it's from a place of wholeness, not desperation. If you choose to decline, it's because you trust your path. Either way, you aren't left in emotional limbo. As we close this exploration, remember the core of Jung's wisdom. Every relationship, especially the ones that end abruptly, holds a mirror up to your deeper self. The mysterious disappearance that once tormented you can become a catalyst for the most profound self-discovery you'll ever experience. Instead of framing it as a personal failing or an unsolvable puzzle, you can see it as an invitation to look inward, find unhealed wounds, and reclaim your power. If you keep feeling the pull of their absence, that might signal you have unfinished business within yourself, not necessarily with them. Despite the controversies surrounding Carl Jung, his rumored affairs, his clash with Freud, his fascination with the occult, his overarching message stands. The unconscious shapes our emotional reality in ways we rarely recognize. And when someone vanishes with no warning, the unconscious might be screaming for you to wake up to your own patterns. So what's the best next step? It might be a quiet moment of reflection, journaling your fears and aspirations. It might be seeking support from a counselor familiar with Jungian methods. It might even be having a respectful conversation with that person if, by some miracle, they choose to reappear in a mature way. But always remember, the ultimate power lies in deciding how you interpret your experiences. Instead of waiting for them to fill the gaps, you fill those gaps yourself by embracing every shadow, every curiosity, and every hope that arises in your heart. For many people, this perspective shift is shocking in its simplicity. You realize you don't need dramatic explanations or a final text that ties everything up neatly. You don't need to prove your worth to someone who disappeared. You're free to mourn what was lost, to learn what it revealed, and to move forward, knowing you've gained a priceless level of self-awareness in the process. If anything in this video resonated with you, I invite you to share your thoughts and experiences below. You never know who might be going through a similar situation, silently searching for words that could spark their own transformation. Your story or reflection could be the missing piece that helps them understand they're not alone, and that they too have the power to heal and move on. Before you go, don't forget to like, subscribe, and tap the notification bell if you want more insights into the murky depths of the psyche, the secrets of Carl Jung's teachings, and how they might apply to your everyday life. Every time you engage, by commenting, sharing, or subscribing, you help spread these messages to more people who need them. You also become part of a community dedicated to self-discovery rather than dwelling in blame or victimhood. Remember, even if you never get the answers you crave from the one who vanished, you have the power to answer the biggest question of all: what part of me is ready to heal and step into a brighter, more aware existence? That, more than any fleeting text or phone call, is where the true revelation lies. And in that revelation, you'll find the freedom to look back on their disappearance, not as a painful mystery, but as the spark that ignited your deeper journey toward wholeness. Stay curious, stay open, and keep exploring the places where logic and mystery meet. Because in those shadows and those unspoken connections, you might just uncover the most remarkable parts of yourself. Until next time, remember that everything you've been seeking outside might have been waiting inside you all along.